David, nice to see you.
Hey, Laura, good to see you. It's been a minute, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it flashed by, but I think it's been like 5 years since I was there in Nairobi with all of you.
Yeah, that's about right. A different world we lived in at that point, huh?
Yeah. You may not remember that day, but I remember it vividly because I spent the entire day with your team and we actually saw installations being used. We met women who were really earning a living from the units that you guys had in the field. And then you took me out to the production facility and the warehouse, and I saw the whole value chain. So it made a huge impression on me, and I followed Sanergy ever since. So I'm really happy about our ability to connect today, and just I can bring you up to speed on what Kohler's doing and see where we have this intersection.
Sure, that would be great. And yeah, no, I remember your trip well. It's not every day, that the big toilet manufacturers, hardware manufacturers, come to see our work. And so we were very flattered and really enjoyed just trading notes on the opportunities and challenges, and that did plant the seed for some great work that we're working on now, which is so exciting.
So I think what impressed me is the story of the founding of Sanergy and how the three of you from MIT were really kind of working on a case to present in a class, and then it started this business. And for me, and then our connection really was the Gates Foundation work, because we were working on closed loop sanitation with Gates, and you had been funded by Gates as well. And that was how we originally connected. So yeah. And the journey on sanitation has become ever more important. So
great. Yeah. Cool.
So today I just wanted to keep you up to speed. Today my role is HR, head of HR globally for Kohler. We are almost an $8 billion-ish company with 36,000 people around the world, particularly in kitchen and bath, as you know, where sanitation is a big part of what we do, but also in power and other things. We're hosting the Ryder Cup soon, so that's exciting.
Nice.
And then I have stewardship and sustainability and innovation for good, really. And that's what we're talking about today is the work that we're doing with you on innovation for good. And there's lots more to talk about, but that kind of brings you up to speed on where I am.
That's cool. And your innovation for good work is so exciting. And I heard you just got recognized by Fast Company for being such a great innovator on these fronts.
Yeah, that was exciting.
Congratulations to that.
Yeah, we just found out a few days ago. So we are very honored. And one of the things that makes us different, David, is that we try to get our associates connected with the purpose work and get them in the field, have our engineers help innovate the solutions. We do everything in-house, and we draw our people in and get them connected, whether they're in India, whether they're in China, whether they're in North America or Europe. So we call it Associates in Action. So I think connecting them to this higher reason to do the work that they do.
Great.
So we're here really, you and I are talking about this gap in sanitation, right, around the world, and non-sewered sanitation, and why innovation around that space is so important.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and this is something that's been near and dear to our hearts at Sanergy since our founding back in 2011. As you mentioned, we started as a class project as graduate students at MIT in a class that challenged us to come up with a solution to a poverty challenge that affected the lives of over 1 billion people. And, of course, while there's some really incredible fancy toilet designs out there, there's also this other side where over 4 billion people lack access to safe sanitation. And what we mean by that is not just a good toilet, which you definitely need, but that waste is then being safely collected, treated, and reused and disposed. And so, and that's the idea we came to as a company or as an idea initially, and then came here to Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, which has now been my home for the last 10 years, and has been just an incredibly exciting journey. And as we've grown, we've now been able to start to work with the likes of Kohler. So yeah.
So I think many people take for granted the infrastructure of a sewer system, essentially, right?
Yeah.
We just wake up every day and don't realize that that infrastructure sits beneath our buildings and
Yeah.
removes the waste. It disappears. Yeah. It's treated. So the developed world, what they treat like 70 to 80% of the waste, something like that, because that's the way our cities were built, right? With infrastructure. But there's so many parts of the world that don't have the infrastructure, so waste goes unmanaged.
Yeah, that's right. Conventional sewers create this wonderful flush and forget situation. But in cities like Nairobi, and frankly, most cities throughout the developing world, conventional sewage coverage is very low, and that's for a few reasons. One, it does require huge capital investments up front. Two, some of the it requires space and planning too. So there's often like a topographical challenge. Mm-hmm. A great example is a city like Kigali in Rwanda. The land of 1,000 hills. It's not easy to build sewer systems there at all. This also, combined with the fact that you have, very densely populated areas, often at high water table, living on where there's high water tables, it's really often a big technical challenge. And then the third is that we do have significant water scarcity, and this isn't actually, this isn't an argument per se of like why you shouldn't have sewers, but it is a reality, which is that, just a couple of years ago, the Nairobi dams went down to like 10% of their capacity, right? Or Cape Town actually had day zero, and they weren't far away. And, if we're using that precious water just to flush toilets, there's, there is potentially a lot better ways that we can be doing this.
Right. I mean, in the United States, we're using clean drinking water to flush down toilets, which if you think about other parts of the world that can struggle to get clean drinking water to drink.
Yeah.
Right. It's something it's a problem we have to solve.
Yeah. No. And interestingly, in the US now, you're starting to see things like very high-end toilets that involve no water. And we're trying to do very affordable toilets that also involve no water. And so there is this funny convergence that is coming for similar reasons.
Right. So that's where we have this tiny business unit called Innovation for Good. So we're trying to innovate solutions. And in this particular case, we're attached to SDG number 6, which is part of the UN sustainability goals, in order to take our know-how in sanitation. We're one of the leading companies around the world in the kitchen and bath industry, and take our know-how and apply it to the world's biggest problem. And it came, we have been in business for 148 years, but it was really visiting India, David, when we started and we were building our business over the last 15 years in India. We started to realize how much unsewered sanitation there is everywhere. And in the biggest cities, outside, just in the slums in Delhi, there are severe problems with waste management and safe sanitation, particularly for women and girls, and putting their lives at risk. So we said, how can we jump in and solve this? So that was, 6 years ago, and we've been on this journey learning about unsewered sanitation, and it really led us to this project that we're working with all of you on.
Yeah. No, and we appreciate that. And, and it's interesting with non-sewered sanitation or unsewered sanitation, there's also a lot of bad solutions out there right now. Probably the most typical that you see are like unlined pit latrines, right? Yeah. And so, which is typical, and they're, well-designed pit latrines can work quite effectively, but these unlined ones are a disaster. So the waste really just leaches into the soil and waterways, puts people at risk. And for that and for some other reason, for that, non-sewered sanitation often gets a bad rap. But there are so many great solutions out there too. And that's something that we as Sanergy have been really working on, is how can we utilize particularly container-based sanitation, where waste is being safely containerized, so that and then working out the logistics so that you can actually safely remove that waste and then guarantee that it's treated, so it effectively becomes like an off-grid sewer system, as it were. And these types of ideas, or this type of approach, we think has so much potential, and I think that's where Kohler is moving on its journey too.
Yeah, I mean, the services around the container-based unit, right, are so important. You can't just have the unit, you need the services. And Sanergy is really good at you've over the course of your incubation as a business, you've figured out how to fine-tune the services to collect the waste. And you even have, I was reading that you have a pit latrine service as well.
Yeah. So we actually, so maybe just to quickly explain for the audience too, but like of what we're doing. So we lead with our container-based sanitation work, and so basically have this network of waterless facilities called Fresh Life toilets and Fresh Fits. Now, Fresh Life toilets are designed for residential compounds where maybe 5 or 10 families are living in a private shared context, and they use that toilet. And then the Fresh Fit is used on an in-home basis. And that's just something that we've been piloting over the last couple of years too. What happens is that we then work with people in the community who subscribe to a service, SaaS. That's like a SaaS model, we call it, like sanitation as a service. So the waste is then being safely collected. We hire people from the community who are full-time employees, and they do the waste collection on a daily basis or every other day. The waste is then taken out of the community, and then we guarantee that it's being safely treated and reused. And so we work with partner organization that actually is converting it into both animal feed, organic fertilizer, and briquettes. And so in this way, we have this nice full value chain approach that is also proving to be the most cost-effective way to be able to serve people in low-income areas. In our efforts to make sure that we process all the waste in the community, we also launched a pit emptying service. So we work with established pit emptiers, and what we're then able to do is upgrade their services. And so what we do is ensure that they bring that waste to an exhaustion center where it's being safely managed from that point. And so this is in our effort to get 100% of the waste out of the community, and that and we work with the sort of the infrastructure as it is for any city. But of course, what we want to see is everybody using improved sanitation services across, regardless of where they live.
Right. So such a huge opportunity to improve people's lives. And it'll be super interesting to see how Sanergy can do that through what you've learned in Nairobi, and how do you scale, right? How do you help other urban centers do this with large populations?
Yeah, no, it's a big question. We got big ambitions to be able to go to other places, but there are different ways of expanding. And one thing we're excited about is the potential of working with partners, who have different insights and approaches to be able to help us replicate our model in other cities.
So let's just talk for a minute about the work we're doing with you.
Sure.
We've designed a beautiful unit, actually, that we've got some of our most talented engineers on this work with you. So tell me what this unit that Kohler's, we're about to field test about 3 units with you. It's, and our team, some of our team is going to go over and see how they're working in the field. But tell us how this unit is different than what you have today, and what it will be able to do.
Yeah. So we look at this from a couple perspectives. Right now, we have we have our toilet designs, but we don't have, but we're always looking for ways for this to be done more affordably. And a mature large company like Kohler is in a really strong position to be able to have that kind of operational and production efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, that's really important. Second, as you're mentioning, you're bringing your best engineering talent to this challenge. We are, we have great engineers too, of course, but
I bet from MIT.
But we're not nearly, we're not nearly as large, and so from what we've seen from some of the designs, there's some really cool and different innovations in the design that we're really excited to be able to try out, and for this trial, because we hear feedback all the time, but one thing that people in urban informal settlements is and I think is a challenge for the whole sanitation sector is how do you make this aspirational products, right? How do you make the gem as desirable as a smartphone, right? Is the way I think about this, because people are going to keep buying smartphones, and that's what we're starting to see in some of these designs for what you guys. For what Kohler is doing.
So that's exciting. If we could make everybody want a gem like they want a smartphone, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, right? And this is the challenge for the sanitation sector. How do we make it, aspirational while also affordable too? And yeah, so that's so that's why we're really excited to enter into this trial, and what we think that and what we're excited also about is that I mean, Kohler, you all are on a learning journey too, which you mentioned, and one thing we will all need is a lot of feedback from residents in these communities, honest, direct feedback about why these are working or what improvements need to happen.
Right.
And that's one.
So we can iterate, right? We can go back, redesign,
Right.
Iterate, improve. And so that constant feedback loop is super important.
Yeah. And so, from our work for 10 years in these communities, like, we know a thing or two about that.
Right.
And so that's what's making this so effective. As a partnership. And then secondly, of course, as I mentioned, we really understand this bit that Kohler hasn't always had to worry about, which is like, where does the waste go?
Yeah.
And as you think about and as we think about these designs, how can we help you identify ways that this model will really work, product will work, as we as we move through from the trial stage.
So I want to pick up on a couple things. With our relationship with Gates, we learned a really important point about sustainable solutions, not just kind of what I'm going to call charitable solutions.
Yeah.
The difference between check writing or some company coming in and just putting a Band-Aid on something, but actually driving an innovation that ultimately the community or the individual owns. And I think that's when I saw Sanergy in use, in practice, that's what you're all about. And that's my hope, that it really becomes something that either is owned by an individual and it's used to give access to a safe toileting situation for many, and it is a profitable opportunity, right? Or a family can buy it and it can be their own private situation, but it becomes something that they maintain, they could earn money from, right? And therefore it's self-sustaining.
Yeah. Yeah. No. That, and we're totally aligned there. I think that it is really different. First of all, when you have significant individual or community investment in these types of endeavors, there's always a world where it can be, the residents of communities can be seen as just beneficiaries, which is sort of an NGO, an NGO-y word for, and that people will benefit. And I think that is something that neither Kohler nor Sanergy takes that view. We have to be developing products that people want. And one way that and a couple ways that they will want it is because either it will improve their lives, either from a health perspective, environment perspective, or an economic perspective. They'll make money.
So David, our associates around the world are watching this project. And that's exciting because they're interested in how we're unfolding this. And so I talked earlier about this Associates in Action. We went out a few years ago and did a survey, and they told us that water, we were most uniquely suited to impact solutions around SDG 6. So we created this umbrella campaign called Safe Water for All, and that's both on the safe sanitation side and also clean, safe drinking water. And so this fits right in to that work. And we're going to be telling this story as you continue to test and give feedback. And it'll be really interesting, the setbacks, the improvements, and then ultimately, hopefully it's launched at scale, right? And we can tell that story too, how many lives we're impacting. Your impact, what I read when I was getting ready for this conversation, something like you've got 2,500 units in the field, maybe, but you're
we're now up to 4,000.
4,000 units. So you must be impacting 300,000 to 400,000 lives, something like that.
Yeah, maybe like 150,000, but we're getting there. But we're getting there. So
each toilet can actually support a number of people in a community.
That's right. So the Fresh Life toilet can serve about 34 people comfortably in Nairobi, and then of course an in-home one, be it the Fresh Fit or the Gem, would serve a family of 4 or 5.
So let's just talk a minute about climate change and how do you all at Sanergy think climate change is affecting this drive for safe sanitation?
Oh, well, it's interesting. I mean, so first of all, one thing that we're doing in partnership with the Container-Based Sanitation Alliance and with some others is working out, first of all, entering into the carbon credit market and doing the methodology around that. There are carbon offsets achieved. First of all, by safely managing waste. When the waste is out there, it releases gases. And then, of course, converting the waste into things like fertilizer, where the carbon is effectively sequestered into the soil, reduces the emissions of gases too. Secondly, this is more of an interesting infrastructure challenge, or I shouldn't say interesting, it's tragic more than anything. But it's, but with climate change, we've seen increased flooding in urban areas in particular. When you see increased flooding, things like pit latrines or poorly managed sewers start to flood. And that's when you start to see really significant things like, like cholera outbreaks and such. What container-based sanitation does is because the waste is containerized, it ends up being the impervious to those conditions, which is really, really, really important. And so that's that's been central for us for adapting to climate change and making sure that people are staying safe in the face of it.
Yeah, so climate change impacting public health because we have some non-sewered situations that are not safe.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so flooding in particular, crazy. Let's talk for a minute about the importance of partnerships.
Yeah.
Okay. And I always talk about the fact that we can do a lot of things at Kohler, but we're not on the ground in many of the communities really, and we're not experts in that conduit between some of the engineering work and design work we can do to really the delivery of the right solution for that particular community. And that's why the partnerships that we have around the world are so important, because you guys are there, you're experts at how your community can use a solution. And so we have partnerships depending on the projects. You're one of our partners. So how do you guys see partners?
Yeah. Well, we see it several ways. I mean, first of all, there's always that funny proverb about if you want to go, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? Or whatever that one is.
Right.
But it's true, as we said at the outset, this affects 4.2 billion people.
Right.
This is huge, so this is not something that is going to be solved by one organization, not by Kohler, not by Sanergy. That is for sure. We do need to be able to work together. And the second is that we have different strengths, and we talked about like Kohler's some great strengths on everything from designing products, designing gracious products, and at the same time, we offer, as you're saying, like we're on the ground, we understand what it's like to work in this context, and so as we build a partnership based on trust, we each bring something to it that the other can't, and so that's what's so important. That's what we go into as we think about partnership, and that's something that needs constant affirmation too, to making sure that these types of the type of work is happening. And I will say, over the last few years, at every junction, you and the team have we've been able to keep iterating and keep finding new ways to work together and push this forward, which is exciting.
And I really respect the work you're doing on the business of waste management. There is the human interface with the units that you have in the field, the Fresh Life units, but then the business of taking waste and making it a commercial product that adds value back is pretty incredible. And that's a value chain where people can make money from waste, right? And that idea, that circular economy, really, really important. And do you find that that's the work that you continue to help to get better and better at?
Yeah. I mean, both. I mean, one, the circular economy approach continues to grow. We're doing some really incredible things with the waste, but also I do want to underscore that we're also finding what you might call business model innovation on the sanitation side. We're doing really well in that. We're making things more efficient, which is super important, because no matter what, when you're serving the lowest income populations, it's always going to come down to very fine margins about what people are able to afford. And indeed, if when you need support from municipalities, they want it to be as cost effective as possible too.
Right.
And we're really, starting to show with the work that we can do with sewers that it's at least compared to sewers, it's at least 5 times cheaper, which is a pretty significant saving product. So.
Well, thank you to you and your team. You're doing great work, David, and we appreciate your partnership and want to see you create bigger and bigger impact.
Likewise, Laura.
Thanks.